The champagne glasses were still full when my world quietly broke apart. I remember staring at the bubbles rising to the surface, tiny and restless, like something inside me trying to escape. The music was soft, people were laughing, and my daughter's wedding reception felt like a dream I had spent years building. I stood there in my pale blue dress, smiling at guests, nodding at conversations I barely heard. My name is Claire, and that night I learned how a life can split in two without making a sound. It didn't happen with shouting or tears. It happened with a single envelope placed in front of me, as if it were just another item on the table. For a moment, I thought it might be something harmless. Maybe a receipt, maybe a note, but deep inside I already knew. There are moments when your heart understands something before your mind is ready to accept it. That was one of those moments. I didn't want to look at it, but I couldn't look away either. My fingers stayed still on the table, as if touching it would make everything real. The room felt warmer suddenly, heavier. I took a slow breath and tried to stay present, tried to hold on to the joy around me, but something had already shifted, something I couldn't undo. I turned my head slowly and saw my husband standing beside me. He looked calm, too calm, that kind of calm that feels rehearsed. He adjusted his cufflinks like he always did when he was trying to control himself. I noticed he was wearing the same watch he had worn on our honeymoon. For a second, it made me feel something soft, something familiar, but that feeling disappeared quickly. "You should take a look," he said quietly. His voice didn't shake. It didn't carry emotion. It sounded like he was discussing a business matter. That hurt more than anything. I didn't open the envelope. I didn't need to. I had seen the distance growing for months. The late nights, the silence at dinner, the way he stopped asking me how my day was. I had noticed everything. I just chose not to name it, because naming it would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that. Not when my daughter's wedding was so close. Not when everything was supposed to be perfect. Not now, I whispered. My voice felt small but steady. I kept my eyes on the table, on the reflection of the lights in my glass. I didn't want to see his face. I didn't want to see confirmation of what I already feared. He leaned a little closer, lowering his voice even more. "It's better this way," he said. Better for who? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. I had spent too many years swallowing my questions, too many years choosing peace over truth. I looked across the room at Rachel, my daughter. She was glowing. Her laughter filled the space around her, bright and untouched. She was dancing with her husband, her dress moving like soft waves. She had no idea what was happening just a few tables away, and I wanted to keep it that way, at least for that night. "We can talk later," I said. I thought that would end it. I thought he would understand. But he didn't move. He didn't step back. He stayed there, waiting. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about timing for him. This was about control, about choosing the moment that would silence me the most. And he had chosen well, because I wasn't going to ruin my daughter's wedding. I wasn't going to create a scene. He knew that. He had always known exactly how far he could push me. I picked up the envelope slowly. It felt heavier than it should have. My hands didn't shake, and that surprised me. After everything I had felt over the past months, I expected to break, but I didn't. I opened it carefully, as if I were handling something fragile. The papers inside were neatly arranged, with little tabs marking where I needed to sign. It looked organized, clean, final, divorce. The words sat there in front of me, cold and clear. I read the first page even though I didn't need to. My eyes moved over the words without really seeing them. 22 years of marriage reduced to legal language. It felt unreal, like I was reading someone else's story. I thought about all the years we had spent building a life together, the small apartment we started in, the nights we stayed up talking about the future, the way he used to hold my hand in crowded places. All of it felt distant now, like it belonged to another version of us, a version that didn't exist anymore. "Just sign it," he said softly. There was a hint of impatience in his voice now. That was new. He usually hid that better. I looked up at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I saw him clearly. Not as my husband, not as the man I had built a life with, but as someone else, someone who had already left, long before this moment. "You planned this," I said quietly. It wasn't a question. He didn't answer right away. That told me everything I needed to know. I felt something shift inside me then. Not anger, not even sadness. Something calmer, something stronger, like a quiet decision forming. I picked up the pen from the table. It felt cool in my hand. I hesitated for just a second, not because I wasn't sure, but because I was saying goodbye, not just to him, but to the life I had known for so long. Then I signed. One page, then another, and another. Each signature felt like a step away from something that had already ended. When I finished, I placed the papers back into the envelope and slid it toward him. He took it quickly, almost too quickly, like he was afraid I might change my mind, but I wasn't going to. Not anymore. He nodded once, a small, awkward gesture. Then he walked away, just like that. No apology, no explanation, nothing. I watched him leave the room, blending into the crowd and disappearing as if he had never been there at all. I sat there for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. The music continued. People kept laughing. Life moved on, unchanged for everyone else. But everything had changed for me. My sister came over a few minutes later. She looked at me carefully, her eyes searching my face. "What happened?" she asked. I took a deep breath and met her gaze. "He gave me divorce papers," I said. Saying it out loud made it feel more real. She blinked, clearly shocked. "Here?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes, here." She sat down beside me, her presence warm and steady. "What do you need?" she asked gently. I thought about it for a moment. There were so many things I could have said, but in that moment, only one thing felt right. "Cake," I said softly. "And please, don't tell Rachel tonight." My sister squeezed my hand and nodded. She didn't ask more questions. She just stood up and went to get the cake. I watched her walk away, feeling grateful for her in a way I couldn't fully explain. I turned my attention back to the room, to my daughter, to the life still unfolding in front of me. And that's when my thoughts drifted back to that morning, to the decision I had made before any of this happened. Because what my husband didn't know was that I had already taken steps of my own, steps that would change everything. And if I'm being honest, that morning was just as important as this moment. I need to go back, because none of this started at the reception. It started long before that. It started with small changes, small distances, the kind you don't notice at first, the kind you explain away. My husband and I met when I was 27. I was working long shifts as a nurse, trying to build something stable for myself. He was ambitious, confident, full of plans. I liked that about him. We got married 2 years later. Everything moved quickly, but it felt right at the time. When Rachel was born, we moved to Oakville. It seemed like the perfect place to raise a family. Quiet streets, good schools, safe neighborhoods. We built a routine, a life. I worked part-time for years so I could be there for Rachel, school events, doctor visits, late-night fevers. I handled it all, and I didn't mind. I thought we were a team. I thought we were building something together. My mother lived in Burlington, about 40 minutes away. That house was my childhood. Every corner held a memory. After my father passed away, she stayed there alone, but she never complained. She was strong, independent, the kind of woman who handled everything quietly. 4 years ago, she got sick. It wasn't sudden, but it was serious enough to change things. We started spending more time together. Lunches at her kitchen table, long conversations about life, about the future, about things we had never talked about before. And during those conversations, she started asking questions about my marriage, about how things really were. At first, I gave her simple answers, safe answers, but mothers always know. And she knew something wasn't right. Around the same time, my husband started changing. Late nights at work, more time on his phone, less time with us. And then one night, I saw a message, just one, but it was enough. I didn't confront him right away. I know that sounds strange, but I needed time. Time to think, time to understand what I wanted. Because once I said something, there would be no going back. I thought about Rachel, about our home, about everything we had built. I felt trapped between truth and fear. That's when I opened up to my mother. I told her everything. She listened quietly, just like she always did. And when I finished, she looked at me with a calm I will never forget. "We need to talk about something important," she said. That conversation changed everything. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was practical, careful, thoughtful. She had been planning something to protect me, something I didn't even know I needed. And as she explained it, I realized something painful. She had seen this coming before I did, and she had already started preparing for it. That morning, before the wedding, I had gone to her lawyer's office. I had delayed it for weeks. I kept telling myself I would go later, that I wasn't ready. But something inside me pushed me to go that day. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was her. I don't know. But I went. I sat in that quiet office with papers spread out in front of me and I signed them. My hands trembled then, not like at the reception. This was different. This felt final in another way, like I was accepting something I had been avoiding. The lawyer explained everything carefully. I asked questions, I listened, I nodded. And when it was done, I walked out feeling different, lighter, but also heavier. Like I had just closed one chapter and opened another. I didn't know how important that decision would be just a few hours later, because when my husband handed me those divorce papers at the reception, he thought he had control. He thought he had planned everything perfectly. But he didn't know about that morning. He didn't know about the decisions I had already made. And as I sat there, watching my daughter laugh, holding my sister's hand, I realized something important. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something new, something uncertain, something painful, but also something that belonged to me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a quiet strength rising inside me. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, just real. And I knew, deep down, that whatever came next, I was going to face it. That night didn't end with tears, at least not where anyone could see. I stayed at the reception until the last song played, smiling when people hugged me, thanking them for coming, pretending nothing had changed. Inside, everything felt hollow, like a house after the furniture has been taken out. I watched Rachel closely, memorizing her happiness, the way she leaned into her husband, the way her eyes sparkled without fear. I didn't want to interrupt that moment for her. Not yet. My sister stayed near me the entire time, like a quiet guard, stepping in when conversations became too long or too personal. At one point, she handed me a glass of water and whispered, "You don't have to be strong right now." But I shook my head gently. I wasn't being strong for myself. I was being strong for Rachel. When the reception finally ended and people began to leave, I felt something inside me begin to loosen. Not relief, not peace, just exhaustion, the kind that sits deep in your bones. I helped Rachel gather her things, fixed a strand of her hair, and kissed her forehead. She hugged me tightly, thanking me for everything, and for a moment I almost broke. But I didn't. I held her, smiled, and told her to go enjoy her new life. When I got home that night, the silence hit me like a wave. The house felt unfamiliar, even though I had lived there for years. His shoes were still by the door, his jacket still hung on the chair. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I walked slowly into the kitchen and placed my purse on the counter. My hands finally started shaking, not a little, a lot, like my body had been holding everything in, waiting for this moment to let go. I slid down to the floor, my back against the cabinet, and that's when it happened. The breakdown I had been holding back all day. I cried in a way I hadn't cried in years. Not quietly, not politely. It was raw, messy, uncontrollable. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the silence I had swallowed for months came pouring out at once. I don't know how long I sat there. Time didn't feel real anymore. At some point, I must have fallen asleep on the kitchen floor because I woke up hours later with my cheek pressed against the cold tile. My eyes were swollen. My body felt heavy, but something else was there too. Something new, a strange kind of clarity. The next morning, I woke up with a dull ache in my chest, but also with a sense of direction I hadn't felt in a long time. I made coffee, even though I didn't really want it, and stood by the window, staring at the quiet street. Everything looked normal outside. People walking their dogs, cars passing by, life continuing, and I realized something important. The world doesn't stop when your heart breaks. It keeps moving, and somehow you have to move with it. I picked up my phone and saw 3 missed calls from my husband. No messages, just calls. I didn't return them. I wasn't ready to hear his voice. Not yet. Instead, I called my sister. She answered on the first ring. "I'm coming over," she said before I could even speak. And when she arrived, she didn't ask questions. She just hugged me. And this time, I didn't hold back. I cried again, but softer, quieter, like the storm had passed. And now there was just rain. The divorce process started quickly after that. Lawyers, meetings, documents. It all felt cold and structured, like my life was being reduced to numbers and agreements. But I stayed focused. I remembered what my mother had told me. I remembered the decisions I had made before the wedding. And when my husband's lawyer tried to question certain things, my lawyer was ready. Calm, firm, clear. That's when I saw the first crack in his confidence. He hadn't expected that. He thought I would be unprepared. He thought I would be weak. But I wasn't. Not anymore. Weeks passed and the tension grew. There were moments when I wanted to give up. Moments when the stress felt too heavy. But I kept going. One step at a time. One decision at a time. And slowly things began to shift. Then came the twist I never saw coming. One afternoon, I received a message. Not from him. From her. The woman he had been seeing. My heart dropped when I saw her name. I almost didn't open it. But something inside me told me to read it. It was short. Simple. "We need to talk, please." I stared at those words for a long time. My first instinct was anger. Then curiosity. Then something else. Something I couldn't quite name. I agreed to meet her. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to understand. We met at a small cafe in Burlington, not far from my mother's house. She looked different than I expected. Not confident, not proud, just tired. Like she had been carrying something heavy too. She didn't smile when she saw me. She just nodded. And for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she took a deep breath and said something that changed everything. "He lied to me," she said. I felt my body tense. "About what?" I asked. My voice was steady, but inside I was bracing myself. "About you. About your marriage. About everything." She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers nervously. "He told me you were already separated, that you didn't care anymore, that you were just staying together for your daughter." I felt a sharp pain in my chest, not because I believed her, but because I could see the truth in her eyes. "I didn't know," she continued softly. "Not at first." I stayed quiet, letting her speak. "I found out recently, and when I did, I left him. That caught me off guard, completely." "You left him?" I repeated. She nodded. "I couldn't stay after I knew the truth. I'm not that person." There was no pride in her voice, just regret. I didn't know what to feel in that moment. Anger, relief, confusion, all of it mixed together. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with something real. "Because you deserve to know. And because I'm sorry." That word hung in the air between us. Sorry. It didn't fix anything. It didn't erase what had happened. But it mattered. In a strange, unexpected way, it mattered. I nodded slowly, not trusting myself to say much more. We sat there in silence for a few minutes. 2 women connected by the same man, the same lie, the same pain. And then we stood up and went our separate ways. I walked out of that cafe feeling different. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. Like a piece of the weight had shifted. The divorce finalized months later. It wasn't dramatic, no big moment, just a phone call from my lawyer confirming it was done. I sat on my couch holding the phone, letting the words sink in. It was over. Completely over. I thought I would feel something bigger, something louder. But what I felt was quiet, a deep, steady quiet, like the end of a long storm. I cried that day. Not out of sadness, not entirely, but out of release. Out of everything I had carried finally letting go. Rachel found out about the divorce a few weeks later. We sat together in her apartment, and I told her the truth. Not every detail, but enough. She cried. She held my hand. She asked questions, and I answered honestly. For the first time in a long time, I didn't hide anything. Time passed. Slowly, gently. I moved into a smaller place, just me. No memories attached, no echoes of the past. I started working more, taking care of myself, learning how to be alone without feeling lonely. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the silence felt too loud, days when the memories came back stronger than I expected. But there were also moments of peace, small ones, like drinking coffee by the window, like reading a book without interruption, like breathing without tension in my chest. And one day, I realized something surprising. I wasn't broken. I was different, changed, but still here. I visited my mother's house one last time before it was sold. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, remembering the life that had once filled that space. I stood in the kitchen where she used to make tea, where she had told me about the decisions that would later save me. And I whispered a quiet thank you, not just for what she had done, but for who she had been. Strong, quiet, wise. I carried that with me as I left the house for the last time. Now, when I look back at that night, at the reception, at the envelope, I don't just see pain. I see a turning point, a moment that forced me to choose myself, to stop performing, to start living. It didn't happen all at once. It took time. It took tears. It took breaking down and building back up again. But I did it, and I'm still doing it, every day. Because life doesn't end when something falls apart. Sometimes that's exactly when it begins. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more emotional stories.